Welcome back to Whitt Acres. Today we're back in the fish room and we're going to be setting up the biggest tank thus far. On top of the double stack aquarium rack that we built is the 75-gallon aquarium. This is going to be set up as a natural planted tank, and we're going to be putting an Oscar, a gold severum, and 3 silver dollars in this tank. I'm going to be setting this up as a natural planted tank, and once I get this tank set up, I'll be able to close down the mini ponds over here on this side of the room. We have Balthazar, the Oscar fish, and Seve, the gold severum, in this tub. We have the 3 silver dollars over here, and there's really nothing in this tank but a couple of minnows and some duckweed. But if I can get the silver dollars as well as Balthazar and Seve moved, I'll be able to clean up this whole corner and have a pretty big plan for what's going to go here instead. You can see this tank's already lit up. I am trying out the new light. It's a 4-foot Hygger light. It is a bright LED light and it has all the color spectrum so you can grow plants. And it's also programmable so you can set when it's daytime and when it turns to nighttime. I put the light on first so I can see what I'm doing for the scape, but I also have the filters I'm going to use and the heater laying here as well. Since this is going to be a natural planted tank, I'm going to be using some soil in the bottom as well as a thick sand cap, so we're going to have a deep substrate in this 75. To protect the bottom of the tank from the rocks, I'm going to be using this egg crate, and I'm also going to be using it for another reason as well. But to make a natural tank, we're going to need a deep substrate, we're going to need some wood elements and some rock elements, and then of course we're going to need some plants. So I'm going to be using live plants in here, but since Oscars and silver dollars are both notoriously bad for being in planted tanks, I'm going to be using live plants and fake plants. I already collected up pretty much everything I need. I do have some soil from the backyard like I used in the 20-gallon tanks. I have some rocks that I collected around the pond outside, and I have the sand that I bought from Lowe's all rinsed out and clean. And the wood elements I'm going to be using are already soaking outside. I have some in the pool and some in the pond just so they're saturating with water and they don't float up in the scape when we fill the tank. We already had that happen with the 20-gallon. So I've had the wood I plan on using for this tank soaking in water for a while now, so I'm hoping we don't have that happen again. Now before I put the rack in the tanks here, I did paint that wall behind it, and I even painted this whole corner now. I have this all cleaned up since the last video, and I even framed in that window seal with some wood to make it look nicer for the plants. So all these walls over here got a fresh coat of paint now that we're putting in the new fish tanks. But I am going to be using an aquarium background for this tank just to try and make it a little bit more uniform. It's actually what I've been waiting on to start this video, but I went with a pretty simple design, just kind of a rock face. I have it laid out here. I don't know why they sent it folded instead of rolled onto something. They know it's going to have creases. They even tell you whenever you receive it on the instructions here to roll it up tightly with a tube or iron it on low temperature with a dry rag over top. I did all that and I still have creases in mine, so I'm just going to go with it. Maybe once I get it onto the tank and attached, I'll be able to stretch it and smooth it out as I'm attaching it. Alright, well I think you know what we're doing now, so I'm going to get started with this. This might take some time trying to get everything into position, but by the end of the video we should have a fully escape tank full of water and ready for fish. So the aquarium background that I got on Amazon, and it goes on the outside of the aquarium. I have these 4 little double-sided tape stickums that came with it, and I'm just supposed to stick it to the back of the glass and just kind of stretch it to fit. There's some water spots here, but I cleaned the back of the glass as best I could before I'm going to put this on. And this aquarium's too heavy for me to move by myself, so I'm just going to try and use the space that I have. I can get my arm pretty much all the way back there, so I'm just going to try and stick it and get it done without moving the aquarium. Alright, well this does have some type of number on the bottom. I don't want that in the top corner, so that's going to have to go at the bottom and get covered up by the substrate. Let's see how this works here. Just stick it to the corner. Try to get as close up into the corner as I can. I'm really liking the way this is looking so far. On the inside of the rock ring, I'm adding a full inch of soil, but on the outside, I'm keeping it real sparse. I don't need a lot of soil out there. It's not gonna have a lot of plants. I just want a little bit of nutrition underneath the sand to help support the plants. And then where it is a little bit thicker, in case the Oscar does wanna dig a little bit, I put some more egg crate on top, and then I'm gonna cover all that up with more layers of sand. So if he does dig down, he should hit the egg crate before he starts disturbing some of the soil, which will muddy up the water. So now before I add any of the sand, I want to make sure all this soil in here is saturated. I don't want any air pockets underneath the sand, so I'm going to use this water jug here to make sure all the soil in here is saturated before I cap it off with the sand. I got the hardscape in now and it is looking good. It's even better than I was imagining. I have this awesome little cove here that the wood just wraps around and protects. So that's going to be my planting spot. That's where most of the soil is. There's going to be some plantings around here, but there's also going to be some fake plants as well, because I do want a lot of coverage in this tank, because I'm going to have the Oscar fish, the Severum, and the silver dollars in here. And last time I put the silver dollars with the Oscar fish, it didn't go well.
Balthazar, you didn't. You killed my rainbow shark, bud. That wasn't cool, you. I thought he was big enough. Hopefully he's not doing anything to the silver dollars. They've been kinda hiding in the forest since I put them in there.
I'd love to fill the whole thing up with live plants, but I don't have that many, so I'm going to make up the difference with some fake plants. But before I put any plants in here, I want to fill this up with water a little bit, not all the way, but enough to keep this wood soaked. I don't want it drying out at all. I'm really happy with the way it's looking right now. I know the glass is pretty filthy, but we have a cave here with multiple entrances. I added some of this pea gravel throughout the sand. I actually pulled it from the bog filter of the Oscar pond, so it has some beneficial bacteria on it already. I just thought it added a little bit of pop to the sand. These pieces of wood here I just found at my brother's house while I was walking the dogs, and I already had all the other stone outside, so I'm trying to use things that I already have, and I think the tank is looking really good so far. Let me know what you think down below. I'm going to get some water in this, and then I'm going to start with the plants. The plants are in. I started out with some real plants. I have the bacopa planted right there in the center where the majority of the soil is. I have another plant I put in there with a little red tinge to it. I don't know what that one's called. I have some Java fern over here trying to block the heater. I did add a heater to this tank and an air stone just to keep water moving around the heater. The heater I got is a Hygger double quartz heater. It's 500 watts and it should handle this tank just fine. You can see it's heating up right now. It's set to 75 degrees with this little remote. I'm not sure why it has to be bright orange. It doesn't really blend into a natural scape whenever you have orange coloring to it, so I tried to put the Java fern there in front of it. Then I had a little bit of Java moss. I started stuffing in some of the wood cracks here on the roots. Little piece in there too, and one on the back side. I'll be adding more plants to this as I add to my collection, but to fill in the gaps for now, I added some fake plants. We have that corner over there which the bigger sponge filter is going to go into, and then I'm going to have a smaller sponge filter in the back by this heater, and then I might end up putting a taller plant there in the middle to break up the eye line for the fish going back and forth. But most of the fake plants I have right now are in the Oscar pond already, so I don't want to completely empty that tank just yet because they still are in there. I want to get this tank up and running for a little bit before I transfer everybody into it. I'm going to be running 2 sponge filters on this tank, but to add to the filtration, I'm also going to be running a hang on the back filter. I also got this from Hygger. I'm not associated with Hygger, but I've had good luck with their product so far. So I'm going to get these filters hooked up and then we're going to fill up the tank the rest of the way. Hopefully this wood isn't going to float. Up. It blends in perfect back there. You can hardly even see it. It's one of the aquarium co-op sponge filters, so it has the green color that's almost the same as the plants. And having it over here will help keep water moving across the heater at all times, which is good for the circulation of the aquarium, but it's also good to keep your heater from overheating. Alright, I got the hang on the back filter on there too. This one has a bioskimmer, so that's the little thing right there is supposed to spin and take this biofilm off the top of the water, keeping it clean. This sponge filter down here is actually from the Oscar pond already, so it's full beneficial bacteria. It's a very cycled sponge. So now I'm going to fill this up with water and hopefully that wood doesn't float, and then once we actually put the fish in here, then I can add that final sponge filter. The tank is full and luckily the wood did not float up. I got a little scared there, so I threw a couple extra stone on the wood just to make sure those two didn't float. And then unluckily we did have another sand blowout. The hose floated up whenever the water got so high and it blew a crater in the back side. A massive hole back there, but I don't think it stirred up any of the soil underneath. I did go really light in that area, so I just have to rake that back down into place and maybe add a little bit more sand back there. It should be fine. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know down below your opinion of the tank so far. Whenever I first put water in it and filled it up halfway, there was a bunch of bloodworms swimming around in there, so I'm not sure where they went. I don't know if they went down into the substrate or what, but I am going to be adding some bugs and other microfauna for this tank to try and keep a full ecosystem going. I'm going to have bigger fish in here, so I'm going to have to feed them anyway, but I want the full ecosystem acting in this tank. So I want the microfauna in the substrate and on everything, breaking down all the waste in the tank, and then hopefully they'll leave the live plants alone so they'll be able to do their thing and draw the waste out of the substrate. Check out the air bubbles coming out of this rock. That's awesome. It's actually soaking up the rock and releasing all the air out of it. This one's going a lot slower. I'm going to try and get that hang on the back filter running now that the water's high enough. And I'm definitely going to want to make a lid for this so we don't have all the condensation hitting the ceiling. And the fish I'm putting in here is Balthazar, my Oscar fish, as well as some others. But Balthazar's never been in a glass aquarium before, so I'm not sure how he's going to react. I definitely want a lid on here so he doesn't jump out. He has jumped out of his pond before, so I'm going to have to customize some type of lid here with a feeding port. Alright, well, we have a beautiful aquascape. We have the lights, we have the heater, and we have filtration back there, as well as the hang on the back, which I got that one running, and the bio thing is spinning like it should. So overnight this tank is going to clear up and look even better. I'm probably going to add the 2 little rosy red minnows that I have in here. I bought them as feeders to grow out in the duckweed pond here and then send them out to the big pond where we have the largemouth bass. But I do have native minnows breeding out in that pond, so I really don't need to send these 2 little ones out there. I think I'm going to put them in this 75 gallon just to help it cycle. And I think it'll look pretty cool to have a couple of small fish swimming around in here. And this pond pond here is leaking, so that's another reason I want to get those couple fish out of here so I can shut this whole tub down and the bog filter back there. And then that'll only leave the Oscar pond and the silver dollars in the quarantine tank. Then I'm going to be cleaning out this whole area for something new and big. I fixed the crater in the back there, and I did end up adding the 2 rosy red minnows that I got as feeder fish. So I added the rosy red minnows, and I did my best not to add any of the duckweed to this one. I don't think this is going to be a problem because the silver dollars will actually eat plants, and they did eat some of the duckweed that I added to the quarantine tank. But for now, I'm going to keep the duckweed out of this tank. But we took this from an empty tank to a full natural ecosystem, and it is going to cycle here for a little bit before we add the bigger fish. And I am going to be adding some of the microfauna that I'm growing out in my resurrection jars. That way it won't just look like a natural ecosystem, it'll act like a natural ecosystem. These guys look awesome in here. It makes everything look so huge. I think that's going to be all for this one. If you're interested in seeing the fish go into this tank, as well as the 55 gallon down below here getting set up, and the rest of the fish room taking shape here, make sure to subscribe down below. Hit that like button before you leave, and you can see me and Echo on the next one. Thanks for watching. Echo's sleeping.